Hi, 8th graders. Hope you're having a great day. Today I'm going to walk you through our notes. If you open up to your table of contents, we are getting started with being able to estimate non-perfect square roots. So taking our 2.0 skill one step further than just being able to say it's between these two, and being able to pinpoint that decimal a little bit more accurately. Okay, so this is going to be entry number 38 in your notebook. So if you flip through to that next page, we're going to number this 38, and we're going to glue in this green sheet to our notebook. So take a moment, do that now, so that you have it. You're also going to possibly need to be flipping back and forth to our pink sheet just a little bit with some of those square roots. Okay, so get that glued in, have your notebook handy, and we will go ahead and get started here. So again, our goal by the end is to give an accurate decimal point of that square root. Okay, so 38 on our page, and let's get started with our notes. So these are two big words, approximating and estimating, and they mean the same thing. That's why it has that slash there. Sometimes it may ask you to estimate the square root, and sometimes it may ask you to approximate. It's asking the same thing, okay? So how do we do this? Well, the first thing that we are gonna have to do is we're gonna determine which two perfect square roots. You could write the symbol or you could put out the words. Which two perfect square roots the given square root falls between. Okay, and this is your 2.0 skill. That's what we've been doing the last 2 days. Okay, so can you tell me what it falls between? Okay, next step is once we know, okay, this square root is between this perfect square root and this perfect square root, our next step is we're gonna figure out what non-perfect square root that falls exactly in the middle of those two, okay? It's gonna kind of be our grounding point to figure out where those where the given one is falling. Is it coming after the halfway point? Is it really close to that halfway point? Or is it bigger than that halfway point? And how we do that is we need to remember how to find what we call the average. The average is the middle. And so I'm just going to make a note here that we are going to add the two perfect square roots together, and we are going to divide by 2. That's how we find an average. We add the two perfect square roots together and we divide by 2. And I will give you some tools to do that in our examples as we talk, because you're not going to have a calculator. And so we're going to kind of help us find that middle point, or about what that middle point is, okay? Step number 3 is to find which perfect square root the given square root is closest to. Okay, is it closest to the greater one? Is it closer to the less one? Or maybe it's in that non-perfect one that's really close to the middle. Okay, and then step number 4 is that we are going to pick a reasonable decimal to approximate, which is just a fancy word for estimate or come close, the non-perfect square root. And we are simply going to make an estimate. There will be a range of acceptable answers Okay, there is not one right answer when we are doing this with our brains and not a calculator, okay? And remember, these are decimals that keep on going forever and ever and ever and ever. We can never find the exact number that when multiplied by itself will give us a non-perfect square root. Okay, these are decimals that keep going. I'm only asking you for one decimal place. Okay, that's it. To the tenths place. Is it 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, and so on and so forth. Okay? So we have what I like to call our little roller coaster here. Okay? This roller coaster starts out nice and flat, and then it climbs up to the middle and it peaks, and then it comes back down. This is kind of a way to help us divide these good, reasonable decimals. Some of us have really great number sense, and these kind of come naturally, but this roller coaster can help us if we're uncertain of how to or what decimal to pick, okay? So notice here we have this sum whole number, okay? This could be 5. Then over here we have the next whole number. This could be 6. So if we have identified that our non-perfect square root falls between 5 and 6, what we have found is that this is 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, and 5.9. All of those decimals exist between 5 and 6, or between 8 and 9. All of these decimals exist. Okay? So when our square root is closer to this number, we're going to use 0.1, 0.2, or 0.3. So we'll use this decimal when closer to lesser square root. Okay, when we're closer to that lesser square root, we're going to pick that 0.1, that 0.2, or that 0.3. Okay? 0.4, 0.5, 0.6 will be acceptable decimals when in the middle. Okay? And we will label here this middle number. Okay? We'll label that middle square root, really. So this will be some sort of square root that we label as the middle. And finally, the 0.7, the 0.8, and the 0.9, those decimals we will use when we are closer to greater square root. And I think this starts to make more sense as we practice some of these. Okay, so let's jump in to a practice. And remember, you'll kind of want those pink notes handy, especially as we get into whiteboard practice as well, unless you have all of those square roots memorized. Okay, so here is our first one, 105, and I'm going to set it up right there in the middle. Our first step is to figure out our 2.0 skill. Do what we did yesterday on our skill check. Okay, I'm gonna start, actually I might even make this a little bit bigger so I've got some room here. I need to identify what square root is less than 105, and that would be 100. What square root, perfect square root, is greater than it? 121. So we know that we are between 10 and 11. Okay, so we're between 10 and 11. Now what we need to do is we need to find this halfway point. What non-perfect square root is halfway in the middle of those? And how we do that is we would add up 100 plus 121, and we get 221. It's always going to be an odd number. Always. Okay? You will always end up with an odd number when you're adding these. which means if we end up with an odd number, our halfway point is always going to be 0.5, something 0.5, okay? So how do I figure this out? Well, how do I do this in my head? Some of you may have some good strategies of how you do 221 divided by 2. What I like to do is I can either go one less or I can go one greater. I like to go one less and figure out what's half of 220. My tablet's glitching. Give me a second. It's not playing catch up right now. What's half of 220? Well, half of 200 is 100. Half of 20 is 10. So half of 220 is 110. Okay, trying to get my tablet to connect here. All right, we are back. So here we have, oh, and now it's not working. There we go, 220 divided by 2. And it's glitching, see if it can catch up here, is 110. So if we want to go just one number bigger to 121, we just add that 0.5 on it. So my halfway point is 110. And again, that is the square root here. Okay, so that square root is what's in the middle. These three numbers can help us place where 105 is. Okay, is 105 between 100 and 110.5, or is it between 110 and 125, or 121, excuse me? And we would find it about right here. Okay, that's where we would see 105 is between 100 and 110. This, we know, is 10.5. Okay, it's just a coincidence that this happens to be also have that 10.5 in there, and that can help us place where this decimal would be. Okay, so this decimal is definitely on the other side of the middle. We are not quite close to that middle. So I would say that a reasonable estimate for this, and we put our point right there, is 10.2 or 10.3. I would probably take either one of those as reasonable estimates, okay? So that's what we're gonna try to keep doing, okay? We're gonna find that lesser square root, find the greater square root, find the middle, and then place our point where it belongs, okay? So let's try a new one, the square root of 8. So again, I'm going to draw my number line here, and looking at my pink sheet, I would see that the lesser square root would be 4, and the greater square root would be 9. Now some of you might be able to already say, oh, I think I know where this dot might be. And that's awesome. Let's just talk about what that halfway point is, because that may help us to better decide. So this time we've got 4 plus 9. 4 plus 9 is 13. So instead of doing 13 divided by 2, I'm going to do 12 divided by 2. If I cut 12 in half, what would I have? I would have 6. And to go one higher, that means our halfway point is 6.5. And that's the square root. Okay, so I'm taking one number lower so it's even, and then all I have to do to go one number higher is add that halfway point on it, 0.5. Okay, this helps me place where is 8. Okay, so here I'm going to have 7 and 8 in between here. All right, so I might say 8 is probably right there. Okay, remember this is 2, this is 3, and this is 2.5. So we know we can't be bigger than 3. So our decimal has to be 2 point something. And if we look at that roller coaster being closer to the greater, we would end up with maybe 0.8 or 0.9 as reasonable estimates. 2.8 or 2.9. Okay? Let's try one more. All right? 31. So we're going to draw our number line again. We're going to identify that the lesser square root is 25. The greater square root is 36. That places us between 5 and 6. Our halfway point would be 5.5. Let's find out what square root that is. To do that, I do 25 plus 36, and I get 61. Instead of doing 61 divided by 2, maybe a little bit easier is 60 divided by 2. One less. 60 divided by 2 is 30. To go one higher, I do 30.5. Throw my square root on there. That helps me see that this 31 is super close to the middle. It's just a little bit bigger than that, right? Really close. It's not exactly in the middle, but it's really close, right? 31 is just a touch bigger than 30.5. So we would say a good estimate would probably be 5.5 or 5.6. Those would be some reasonable estimates. Okay, so there is your skill of being able to approximate on a non-perfect square root to a single decimal point. You've got your steps of your 2.0 skill, finding the middle, finding where it's closest to, and then making that estimate with decimals. Okay, you're going to practice with some whiteboard practice, and then tomorrow will be a day of practice in class, and we will wrap up with a skill check on this skill. I miss you all. Hope to see you tomorrow or even later today. See you later. Bye.